Gone with the Wind is remembered as one of the most epic films of all time. But did you know that some of its most famous scenes were filmed before Scarlett O'Hara had even been cast? Clark Gable once did not want to accept the role of Rhett Butler, and the film's behind-the-scenes events changed Oscar history forever. Stay until the end, because the following 12 weird facts will reveal the strangest, most controversial, and most unbelievable secrets behind this 1939 masterpiece. Before we begin, what strange fact about Gone with the Wind did you already know? Comment below right now and see whether the secret you know appears in this list or not. Do not forget to hit like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you do not miss fascinating stories about classic Hollywood films. Number 12. Too British, too determined, and too brilliant to be ignored. David O. Selznick interviewed more than 1,400 women during his search for Scarlett O'Hara. The casting process lasted for months, cost about $100,000, and generated an enormous amount of publicity, making it one of the most talked about searches for an actress in Hollywood history. The entire country followed the process almost in real time. Vivien Leigh did too. But unlike those who simply watched from the sidelines, she quickly became convinced that the role had to belong to her. The common opinion at the time was perfectly clear. A British actress could not play a Southern belle. The film industry did not even want to consider the possibility. However, Leigh had a connection to Myron, Selznick's brother, through his talent agency. That helped her get one foot in the door, even though no one was truly ready to open it for her. So she went to Hollywood, where Laurence Olivier was filming Wuthering Heights. Leigh arrived fully prepared, remained determined, and patiently waited for the right moment. That moment finally came when Myron took her to the burning Atlanta set and introduced her to David with the famous words, "I want you to meet your Scarlett O'Hara." It was almost no longer an introduction, but rather a confirmation that the woman they had been searching for all this time had finally appeared. The woman the film industry had once considered too British to portray a Southern belle, then delivered one of the most acclaimed performances in cinematic history. Number 11. A premiere so massive that the governor declared a holiday for the entire state. The world premiere of Gone with the Wind was held in Atlanta on December 15, 1939. The event was so large that Governor Urieth D. Rivers declared that day an official state holiday. However, Mayor William B. Hartsfield prepared for the occasion on an even more ambitious scale. He organized a full 3 days of festivities surrounding the premiere, including parades, an Old South ball with period costumes, and decorations spread throughout the city. All of those activities took place in addition to the statewide holiday declared by the governor. The size of the crowd was also entirely fitting for the event. An estimated 300,000 people lined 7 miles of streets waiting to see the limousines carrying the cast pass through Atlanta. On the night of the premiere alone, about 18,000 more people gathered outside the movie theater. To put that into perspective, Atlanta's population in 1939 was only about 300,000. That means the number of people pouring into the city for this special occasion nearly doubled Atlanta's population. In an era when movies were not yet released simultaneously around the world, Gone with the Wind turned a December film premiere in Atlanta into one of the largest public events ever held in American history. Number 10. They burned down part of Hollywood before they had even found their leading lady. Production on Gone with the Wind officially began on December 10, 1938, with the burning of Atlanta sequence, one of the largest and most expensive scenes in the entire film. However, at that point, Scarlett O'Hara, the central character who appears throughout most of the movie, had still not been cast. The role of Rhett Butler had already been decided. Clark Gable had signed his contract, officially joined the project, and was far too valuable to be placed anywhere near a real fire. So legendary stuntman Yakima Canutt was used as his stunt double. But the situation for the female lead was completely different. That meant one of the film's most important scenes was filmed while a stunt actress ran through real flames in the place where Scarlett O'Hara was supposed to appear. And those flames were not a special effect. Selznick ordered the burning of numerous old studio sets that had been built over a period of 20 years on a 40-acre backlot. Among them was the Great Wall set originally constructed for the King of Kings in 1927, which was later reused in King Kong. Some reports claim that the flames rose nearly 500 feet into the air. Residents of Culver City repeatedly called to report a fire because they believed the entire studio was actually burning down. From the outside, it was a completely understandable assumption. In reality, the burn sequence was far more carefully controlled than the chaos it appeared to create. A system of gas lines and control valves allowed the crew to increase or reduce the intensity of the flames whenever they wanted. Fire crews and fire hoses also remained on standby throughout the filming. In the end, the sequence created an extraordinarily spectacular visual effect. Selznick permanently erased large parts of early Hollywood's legacy, filmed one of the biggest scenes in the movie before his leading actress had even signed a contract, and created one of the most iconic images in cinematic history. Number 9. The King of Hollywood nearly walked away from the role over 4 seconds of tears. Clark Gable spent almost his entire career avoiding crying on screen. So when the Gone with the Wind script required Rhett Butler to break down after Scarlett suffered a miscarriage, his reaction was immediate and intense. By the way, the word miscarriage was not even allowed to appear in dialogue under the Hays Code at the time. As a result, the film was forced to refer to it more gently as an accident.
It's because I'm going to have a baby.
Well, cheer up. Maybe you'll have an accident.
Gable's position from the very beginning could not have been clearer. Absolutely not. He flatly refused to perform the scene the way it was written. Selznick tried to explain why the scene needed to remain, and Victor Fleming also sided with the producer. In the end, Olivia de Havilland personally helped calm Gable down. She told him, "You can do it, I know you can do it, and you'll be marvelous." Eventually, the two sides reached a compromise. The scene would be filmed twice. In the first version, Gable would fully surrender himself to Rhett's emotions. In the second version, he would turn his back to the camera to preserve, at least in part, the cool and completely masculine image he had built over the years. Both versions were filmed. Gable did not leave the set, and production continued as normal. After watching the footage, Gable had to admit that Selznick had been right. The version in which he openly showed his emotions was far more powerful and convincing. He had once threatened to walk away from one of the biggest productions in Hollywood history over just a few seconds of crying in front of the camera. But after watching the scene only once, Gable changed his mind. The scene stayed in the film, and so did Clark Gable. Number 8. Rhett Butler's breath was the real villain of this love story. The romance between Scarlett O'Hara and Rhett Butler is considered one of the most famous love stories in cinematic history. But behind the camera, Vivien Leigh spent much of her time simply trying to get through the kissing scenes as quickly and professionally as possible. In 1933, 6 years before the film was made, Clark Gable developed severe periodontal disease that was so serious nearly all of his teeth had to be removed. By the time he played Rhett Butler, Gable had been wearing dentures for several years. Chronic bad breath was widely believed to be a direct result of that condition. The situation became even worse because Gable was a heavy smoker, causing cigarette odor to cling to his dentures and making his breath even more unpleasant. When speaking privately, Leigh made no attempt to romanticize the experience. She bluntly remarked, "Kissing Clark Gable in Gone with the Wind was not that enjoyable. His dentures smelled awful." That detail suddenly gives those close-up scenes with soaring orchestral music in the background a completely different meaning. The audience saw a couple displaying irresistible chemistry on screen. In reality, Leigh was simply trying to stay in character, finish the scene, and control her breathing so everything looked as natural as possible. Number 7. The same film, but a pay gap that is almost impossible to believe. Vivien Leigh appears in approximately 61% of a film that runs for nearly 4 hours. She worked about 125 days on the set. The total amount Leigh received for carrying Gone with the Wind from beginning to end was only $25,000, equal to about $200 for each day she worked. Meanwhile, Clark Gable appears in only about 30% of the film. He worked 71 days but took home $120,000, equal to about $1,690 per day. Just looking at those numbers, the difference is already crystal clear. At the time, Gable was regarded as the king of Hollywood, one of the most famous male stars in the world. His standard salary at MGM alone was around $4,000 per week. Selznick wanted Gable so badly that he was willing to pay that amount. By contrast, Lee had practically beaten all of Hollywood to win the role of Scarlett O'Hara. But instead of recognizing her as an extraordinary talent, the industry viewed her as nothing more than a newcomer from England who had simply gotten lucky. That perception directly affected Lee's ability to negotiate, which in reality was almost non-existent. Selznick tied her to a strict 7-year contract, while her salary for the film remained at just $25,000. Gable earned far more money even though his workload was not even half of hers. Lee received only a small fraction of that amount, despite appearing in most of the film and carrying almost the entire story. However, by the standards of the Hollywood star system in 1939, this gap was not considered particularly unusual at the time. Gable was the name believed to guarantee box office success, while Lee was seen only as someone who was fortunate enough to be given the opportunity to play the biggest role of her career. Are you interested in little-known facts behind classic movies and television shows? If so, hit like, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with someone who also loves Scarlett O'Hara, Rhett Butler, in the turbulent world of Gone with the Wind. Scarlett once said, "Tomorrow is another day." But before we move on to tomorrow, let us continue exploring the secrets, controversies, and behind-the-scenes troubles that have yet to be revealed. Number 6. The film's most famous romantic scene was once viewed as a crime. The staircase scene is one of the most iconic images in Hollywood history. Rhett holds Scarlett tightly, carries her in his arms, and slowly takes her up the grand staircase as the music swells and the screen gradually fades to black. But Joseph Breen, the head of the Production Code Administration, saw the scene in a completely different way. The exact phrase he used to describe it was marital rape. Under the Hays Code, all forms of sexual violence on screen were strictly prohibited. Breen objected to this scene as early as 1937, 2 years before the film was officially released. However, the sequence remained because Selznick cleverly kept everything within the realm of implication. Rhett carries Scarlett across the threshold, and then the screen fades to black. That deliberately ambiguous approach created just enough room for the scene to pass censorship. According to most surviving accounts, Breen showed surprisingly unexpected leniency.
You will understand that our Production Code Administration is not a one-man censorship. It represents the considered judgment of many persons.
Even so, the entire implication of the scene remained intact. In the following morning scene, Scarlett wakes up looking unmistakably satisfied. The film presents that moment in a cheerful way, almost as if the censorship office had not spent most of the previous 2 years arguing over what the earlier scene actually meant. The people who debated this sequence in 1939 and the audiences who debate it today are essentially asking the very same question. That debate has lasted for more than 85 years, and even today, there is still no sign of a conclusion that everyone can agree on. Number 5. The most expensive gamble in Hollywood history. Gone with the Wind had a production budget of about $3.85 million, equivalent to more than $70 million today. When the film was released, only Ben-Hur from 1925 was confirmed to have cost more. However, Howard Hughes continued to claim for nearly a decade that Hell's Angels had actually been the more expensive production. Whether that claim was accurate, however, is another matter. The scale of this project was almost unprecedented. More than 2,400 people took part in the production, and between 500,000 and 1 million feet of Technicolor film were used. In 1939, Technicolor was still not a fully mature technology. It was expensive, complicated, and every time the cameras rolled, the budget continued to climb. At that time, there were only 7 Technicolor cameras in the entire world. Selznick rented all of them to film the burning of Atlanta sequence because he wanted to capture it from multiple angles at the same time and not miss a single moment. But the technical challenges did not end there. In the novel, Margaret Mitchell describes Scarlett as having striking green eyes, while Vivian Lee's real eyes were blue-gray. To solve that problem, makeup artist Monty Westmore applied dark green eyeshadow around Lee's eyes to make her eye color appear closer to the description in the novel. The cinematography team also used special color filters to enhance the green tones that could be captured on film. The lighting on the set was further adjusted specifically to support that effect. Every one of those details drove the cost up rapidly, while the technology of the time was only just capable of supporting the filmmaker's ambition. As a result, the entire production became a massive gamble. Selznick and his team bet that the film's final quality would be great enough to justify every dollar they had spent. Number 4. The cast did not want the roles, and the author did not want the film to be made. Leslie Howard was 46 years old when he played Ashley Wilkes, a character written to be only in his 20s. His personal opinion of the role was a boring weakling. Howard had never read the novel, had no interest in the character, and did not want to be in the film at all. He agreed only after Selznick offered him a co-producer credit on Intermezzo, a project Howard genuinely cared about. As soon as he finished filming his scenes, he returned to England and did not even attend the grand premiere in Atlanta. Clark Gable's reluctance went far beyond his concern about crying on screen. From the very beginning, he did not want to play Rhett Butler. Public expectations for the character were unbelievably high. Gable believed that no matter how hard he tried, he could never live up to the image of Rhett Butler that millions of readers had already created in their minds. In the end, he accepted the role for one very practical reason. Gable needed the money he would earn from the film to pay for an expensive divorce so he could marry Carole Lombard. As a result, one of the most famous performances in Hollywood history actually began with a personal financial calculation. Then there was Margaret Mitchell, the author of the novel. She sold the film rights for $50,000, but did not want to be involved in the production. Mitchell declined to help write the screenplay and kept her distance from the project throughout the entire production. When she was repeatedly asked who should play Rhett Butler, she suggested Groucho Marx. That answer alone says a great deal about how seriously Margaret Mitchell took the question. One actor believed the role was beneath him, another accepted it only because he needed the money, and the author herself had already prepared for complaints long before the cameras even started rolling. Number 3. Katharine Hepburn walked in full of confidence and walked out in humiliation. Katharine Hepburn did not come to audition for Scarlett O'Hara. She walked in believing that she was Scarlett O'Hara. Hepburn personally campaigned with Selznick and enlisted the help of George Cukor, who fully supported her. At one point, she looked the producer in the eye and declared, "I am Scarlett O'Hara." She went on to say, "The role was practically written for me." Selznick looked Hepburn up and down, then coldly replied, "I can't imagine Rhett Butler chasing you for 12 years. He had two very specific problems with Hepburn, and he did not hesitate to state them both. The first concerned her commercial appeal. By 1938, Hepburn had officially been labeled box office poison by the Independent Theater Owners Association after a series of films earned less than expected. Selznick had invested millions of dollars in the most expensive project of his career. Casting a leading actress whom the film industry had just publicly turned its back on was a gamble he had absolutely no interest in taking. The second issue was even harder to argue against. Selznick believed Hepburn did not possess the irresistible appeal needed to make a man like Rhett Butler become obsessed with and pursue a woman for more than a decade. Hepburn had intensity, perhaps even too much intensity, but it was not the quality Selznick was looking for in Scarlett. He offered her a screen test so she could prove him wrong, but Hepburn refused. She walked in completely convinced the role already belonged to her, turned down the only opportunity to prove herself in front of the camera, and walked away with a cutting remark that people would continue to remember for the rest of her career. Number 2. 3 directors, 16 screenwriters, and somehow they still created a masterpiece. The film went through at least 16 screenwriters in an effort to complete the screenplay. That is right, 16 people. Among them was Scott Fitzgerald, who was brought in to write, finished his work, and left without receiving any screen credit. The situation became so chaotic that, in the middle of production, Selznick declared a screenplay emergency and called in screenwriter Ben Hecht to save the project. Hecht rewrote nearly the entire first half of the film in just 5 to 7 days. During that entire period, he lived almost entirely on bananas and salted peanuts. Honestly, it sounds less like a normal writing process and more like a hostage situation with snacks. But the screenplay was not the only disaster. The directing situation was chaotic in a completely different way. George Cukor spent about 2 years in pre-production. However, he lasted only 18 days of principal photography before Selznick fired him. Victor Fleming was then brought in to replace him. He was an experienced and highly capable director, and now he had to take over one of the biggest productions in Hollywood history. But Selznick began interfering with every line of dialogue, every scene, and almost every single frame with an extreme level of control. The pressure eventually left Fleming exhausted, physically and emotionally drained, and forced him to take 2 weeks off to recover. During that time, a third director, Sam Wood, was brought in to keep production from coming to a standstill. The final result was 3 directors, more than 16 screenwriters, a producer who treated the entire film as his own creative territory, and a screenplay that had passed through so many hands it resembled a relay race. The production was almost complete chaos, yet somehow the finished film became a masterpiece. Number 1. The final line accidentally came to represent everything. Gone with the Wind does not end with a reunion or a perfect resolution. The film ends with Scarlett O'Hara standing alone, having lost almost everything, before quietly saying as the screen fades to black, "After all, tomorrow is another day." What makes this even more remarkable is that the line almost became the title of the entire film. Margaret Mitchell's publisher strongly pushed for the title "Tomorrow is Another Day." But in the end, Mitchell chose "Gone with the Wind," a phrase taken from Ernest Dowson's poem, Sonara. She understood that the title needed to tell the audience what had been swept away, while the final line had to show them what still lay ahead. No advertising campaign could ever have given those words more weight than the moment when the film was released. Gone with the Wind premiered only a few months after World War II broke out in Europe. American audiences were still trying to recover from a painful decade of economic depression. Scarlett's determination to never give up resonated with viewers in a deeply personal way, because many of them understood all too well what it felt like to lose almost everything. In Britain, that connection was even stronger. The film played continuously in London for 4 years, including throughout the Blitz. Audiences watched a woman survive after the world she had known was completely destroyed, while their own cities were being bombed above their heads. By around 1941, that story was no longer simply fiction. So those were 12 weird facts that were strange, controversial, and hard to believe behind Gone with the Wind. Which fact surprised you the most? And do you know any other secrets about the film that we did not mention? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy behind-the-scenes stories about classic Hollywood, do not forget to hit like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you do not miss our upcoming videos. Thank you for taking the time to watch until the end. Your support motivates us to keep uncovering more fascinating secrets behind legendary films. We will see you in the next video.